and welcome to the Ethereum Core Developer Meeting number 88. Just seeing the audio. Yep, audio's working. Let's get started on the agenda. The first one, the integration updates for the Berlin EIPs. James, do you want to take this one?
Yeah. So I made a proposed way of tracking the EIPs that are like doing integration testing as a way of getting the clients to all communicate and then have that be a way of testing all the multi clients. Let me find that EIP and I can just show you. I can just show people. It's in my GitHub.
And while you're looking for that, if anyone is on the agenda and wants to click Agenda Item 1 Berlin EIP's link, it pops up a Google Sheets page that has some of the status updates for the EIPs.
Almost there.
No worries.
It hasn't been merged, so it makes it harder to find sometimes. It's in the BRs. There we go.
Okay, did you post it?
I didn't. 2-7. There we go. This is one that will make sense to look at. And then hopefully we'll get it merged
Okay.
soon. And I can just share my screen too.
And I'm going to put this on the Messenger and Zoom, and it's also in the Gitter channel.
Thank you. So we've had the eligible for conclusion has been the step. I think if we could just kind of gives people some context. So we're looking at separating the EIP standardization process and the network upgrade process. And we already have this natural step, which is EFI as part of the first part of the network upgrade process. And this, my strategy has been to capture the emerging things that happen. So rather than like lay out something in advance that may or may not be what we actually need. So like a natural step that it seems like we've arrived at is as part of integration testing, rolling out ephemeral test nets that have some version of an EIP that then the different clients can choose to take part of and then can sync, and then you're able to test client features as well at fuzz testing clients and stuff like that is a lot easier when all of the clients have toggleable versions of the EIPs. So none of these EIPs are in a state that is saying it will go into mainnet. It's in a state that the clients that the core devs want to test more, and then it can go back to EFI or it can move forward depending on what is learned there. It's really important the community realizes that these are meant for integration testing between clients, not for deploying your dev code or testing your things on production. There are other test nets that can be used for that. Like it will be nuked is the disclaimer. I put a very large one up there. And so the current specification for that is EIP 2537, which is the BLS precompile. And I marked that is in that EIP is in the state that the clients need to get to that point. EIP 2315 is the subroutines EIP, and it's still working on being specified. And then option 1 of EIP 2565, we have decided not to include it based on some feedback from the Open Ethereum team. At least not, and when I say not include, I mean not have it be part of this specification. As soon as there is a version of it that makes sense, the ephemeral testing can be redeployed, and it isn't saying anything about whether anything about mainnet, just to be triply clear. And then this is a way I've been tracking getting ready for it, and this is kind of like a subversion of the pre-version of the Berlin EIP that the spreadsheet that Pooja put together. So clients signaling their intention, then they agree on the specification, which that hasn't happened yet because we're still looking to finalize 2315. And then after they're merged and clients have merged those changes, then we can roll out the testnet that syncs all of them. And that's a good update. If anyone has questions or clarifications or thoughts.
Yeah, clarification. So I think this is a really good approach. And I just wanted to make it clear that this YOLO V1 name, in my opinion, should also be the name when we produce state tests. And any client that can run state tests should accept YOLO V1 as a name of a fork on that state test. Yeah, that's because I think the current test cases that have been merged recently are named Berlin, and I mean they can be regenerated, but please do, and I think we should regenerate them to YOLO V1. But yeah, I just want to say preemptively that clients should not activate all these things under the name Berlin, in my opinion, but under YOLO V1.
Does anyone have thoughts or arguments on that? I'm happy to add that to the specification of this.
Do they eventually get taken out and only Berlin remains?
Yes. So what I can see as a problem, if we start putting out things which says they are Berlin and they are Berlin activatable, and someone updates to that client today and doesn't do anything for another 6 months, and then we roll out the real Berlin, and he sits with an old client that, hey, it has Berlin already, way, I don't have to do anything, then we might run into a problem.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah.
Anyone have, what's the word? Strong feelings either way about this, or would oppose having that be part of the standard for this kind of testnet? I think that sounds good.
Yeah, thanks for doing this, James. It looks really good. And then from there, do we want to continue going through the updates from the teams for each EIP?
Yes. Really, yeah, let me grab the spreadsheet that you have. I can just show that one. And I'll share my screen again. So we can go through for 2315. Has there been, well, 2315 Have we finished the specification enough to actually address whether or not we've implemented them?
So let's call it the original 2315
Mhm.
has been changed regarding the gas cost, and I have a currently open PR to change the gas costs a bit, and I think everyone, I think it's been given a general thumbs up. I haven't really heard from Open Ethereum on this recent change, but know that Bisu at least has approved it and updated the tests accordingly. But if I can just get a thumb up, I will merge that. And on the other, so the other part of the subroutine is whether or not to apply the restrictions proposed by Axic and Wright Wiesner and people. That discussion is still ongoing. But for the testnet, I think we agreed to use the non-restricted subroutine proposal from Greg, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But if I just get a go ahead, I will click the merge button on this, and I think we're finalized.
Open Ethereum.
Yeah, let's let's discuss this after the call. I'll take a look at it. Just didn't have the chance. And as for us, we have a pull request to address the recent changes in the specification. So it's merged, and then there's still another PR for this.
Does when you say recent specification, are you talking about the Axix restricted updates or the original one?
I assume that it has been changed, but like I said, I haven't really taken a look at how it changed after the call. So, yeah.
So the most recent change has been just to bump the gas costs for the 3 opcodes.
Right, but the consensus has been not to restrict the subroutines, right?
I would say that discussion is still ongoing.
Yeah. The consensus is to implement a version that is not restricted onto Yolo version 1, and then use that as a way to move forward discussions after that. As to what to restrict and how much to restrict. So this is a good example of one that it would likely not go to mainnet in its current state, but it is being used as part of integration testing to better understand what state it should go into, if it does at all. So I'll follow up on merging that, and then on client status for that after this call. For EIP 2537, let's just go down through the clients.
There's one more change proposal to the subroutines, and different opcodes from the ones currently in the EIP. It has been discussed probably like a month ago, but nothing really happened. I wonder if that would be something worth to be included in Yolo, or it's fine to have it for later on.
This is part of the call that we had. Is this part of the call that we had on 2315?
No, we didn't have a chance to discuss it, but it's been posted on the Magicians forum quite a while ago.
Well, it sounded like it was going to be closer to the one with Greg's changes with a few updates from Martin as the specification, and we were just going to go with that.
No, so what I mean is currently the three opcodes have, the three instructions have an opcode like B2, B5, B7 or something like that. And there's a suggestion to use a linear opcode space somewhere else. So the opcode here means the actual byte, which is in the bytecode, and the instruction is the what that byte is doing.
I think that totally makes sense, but I don't think we need to change this for Yolo though. What were you gonna say, Peter?
No, I was just asking whether does it really matter where the bytecode is? I mean, what the number is?
It does to the extent that so far every single opcode we have is linear. We don't have like gaps, random gaps, mostly. And this would open just like a new page in the opcode table with gaps in between. The only real effect I can see is it goes back to what is the goal of the testnet. Is the goal of this testnet for only for clients to interact with each other and have like a place where people can try to break it, or is this also a testnet where the users can try out the new functionality?
I mean, nobody stops users from trying it out, but
yeah, but Alex has a point there that if someone makes an experimental compiler which uses subroutine and then we swap out the opcode, it's a bit of a mess.
Is this like presupposing that it would go into mainnet? Like,
I mean,
would it also have problems with things being out of order if we somehow reserved this opcode, but then didn't make sense to figure on or something?
Okay, but I don't really get the whole issue here. So if the original issue is that we don't want to leave a gap, then just change the spec so that there's no gap and done. I mean, I don't think anybody cares about the opcode. So if there's even a slight reason why you would want to change it, just change it.
And that change can be integrated at the same time that the changes that Martin is talking about post-call can be merged, right?
Yeah. Well, I would have to regenerate the EIP examples and stuff, but yeah, that can be. If Axel makes a PR now, we can merge it, and I can update the test cases, and it can be done pretty soon. It's trivial changes.
Is that something you could do, Axel?
Yeah, it's fine with me.
Cool. Anything else on the 2315 before we move on? For EIP 2537, the BLS precompile, let's just start at the, I forgot what we call it, but the readiness implementation status. For Geth, I remember there was an open PR with the precompile code Init.
Yeah, so for Geth, that PR is a bit hanging in the air. So about 2 weeks ago, we started just really heavily testing it, reviewing it. Martin and Mary started fuzzing it, and well, the bummer side of it is that I personally found at least 3 consensus issues and a crasher. Martin and Marius found some crashers. They also found a consensus issue in the assembly code where they just, so essentially the PR ships a Go implementation and 2 variations of assembly implementations, and the assembly codes did not match. I mean, there were some carry issues where for certain inputs, they just produce different outputs. And we're talking about 14,000 lines of assembly code. And while the author of the PR iterated a bit, but essentially what you guys need to know is that, so Martin and Marius found an issue in the assembly code. The response was that, hey, well, here, let's just add these 10 lines of assembly code because, oops, we forgot about the carry. Then later, Marius was asking, why is this algorithm so complicated? The response was like, yeah, well, maybe we can just cut this algorithm out and then we can get rid of 4/5 of the assembly code. And then on top of all of this, on Monday, the PR was updated and all the existing assembly code was deleted, and we just got 14,000 lines of brand new assembly code. So at this point, I honestly cannot imagine how anyone will expect us to actually merge this and fork this into a live testnet when essentially the entire PR was gutted and replaced 4 days ago.
I think 2 weeks ago, I made a mention on Gitter chat that if you have any doubts about the assembly code itself and you don't want to check it, then just there is a pure Go implementation you can ask to just use this one and always degrade to it. It fits into the window for gas prices which were proposed in the precompile. And I think no one ever thought about it and tried to make this decision. And this decision should be made by guest maintainers, not by me or an original author of the PR. Like if you don't want to have assembly, just say it, and Honor most likely will just delete it altogether.
The problem is not with the assembly. The problem is that we found issues in the assembly. So the problem is that the PR wasn't fuzzed against its own itself. So our problems is that we're rushing into it. It's fine to have assembly, but it is not really fine to rush into a fork when the implementation itself wasn't properly vetted. So that's mostly my concern. But maybe Martin can add some other thoughts because they were the ones actually fuzzing the assembly. So.
I think the question here is just to reduce the exposure, like any potential attack or like consensus problem surface. And if it's a final goal, then you can just delete all the assembly, at least for now, and then spend time on just pumping more CPU cycles on just a single implementation without assembly or any other form of branching.
Yeah, so one of the problems is that a good thing about having assembly versions and Go versions was that we were able to do differential fuzzing, because actually finding crashes is very rare, and we probably, I mean, there's probably no crashers in the implementation. But what I fear is that there are differences between the Golang implementation and some other implementation, Rust or C, which causes consensus issues. And we have not been able to do differential fuzzing against the Rust or C implementations because it's a pain in the ass to do, basically. And since they have not been merged into the other clients, we cannot even do slow fuzz testing using the actual binaries and evoking them. Ideally, we would have just integrated the libraries on some fuzzer which called the libraries directly. But that's, yeah, we haven't been able to do that properly. So I would estimate that fuzz testing the clients against each other in a differential mode, that's a couple of weeks of work. We would also need to replicate the benchmarking and make sure that the Golang, the Get implementation, pure Golang based one, still fits within the gas schedules. I mean, it theoretically doesn't stop us from merging something for the testnet. But I think we're kind of skeptical of going live with anything. Just want to highlight that going live with anything on a near-term future.
Well, first of all, as far as I know, Maurice has kind of fixed the problem with linking of a Go wrapper for Rust library, which actually could allow to differentially test library against library without client integration. Of course, if we assume that Open Ethereum would include my PR in terms of integration. When I was doing fuzzy testing myself, well, I did it against the assembly, which is which didn't have problems and crashes and didn't have any divergences with Rust implementation. I think this assembly backend was called ADC or something like this. But I don't expect that I would find anything in pure Go implementation for reasons that this implementation is based on other work which is battle tested against snark provers. So if we just agree that, well, let's just cut out the assembly, performance wouldn't be an issue. And then we can just spend more time on fuzzing just strictly against kind of final piece of code without any additional branching inside based on the implementation.
Right, but I still judge that to be several weeks of work.
Yeah, like some weeks of work for cut the assembly, or just to say that the number of cycles spent in fuzzing is kind of acceptable?
Yeah, the latter.
Well, this is just a matter of number of cores in a machine.
No, it's not just a matter of number of cores. It's also about actually building the fuzzing framework and making sure that the input generation is good and yeah, it's actual coding hours. It's not just CPU hours.
Well, I actually don't know what's your strategy on building as a fuzzer. So far, my observations were that if initial corpus is kind of seeded with test vectors from kind of validity tests from my repository, then more or less I didn't see that fuzzer has ever found new branches. It's more or less means that cannot test any further for kind of plain errors and crashes in other branches of code, and actually making the inputs for which are a priori valid is not that hard. And I think I have it written already. So even while it's not an easy work, it's a matter of how you would want to do the fuzzing. I actually don't know what is your fuzzing strategy, either black box or white box.
Well, there's a bit of a detour, but we use the GoFuzz, so we have native coverage guidance and improve the corpus that way. If we compile with other non-Go native things, then we run into different problems and need to solve the coverage instrumentation in other ways.
No, I just mean that you can immediately get the coverage almost up to the limit which you will not ever exceed by seeding the corpus with tests. At least it's what is, at least this is the behavior of the Rust implementation and various fuzzers for it.
So understanding that this is the hesitation around mainnet, like noting that, as far as getting this merged to be part of Yolo, is there like a path for that, or kind of time for that, or amount of work for that you see? Martin?
But I guess YOLO is kind of easy because we can always wreck it. So I mean, nobody cares if YOLO dies.
Yeah. So then just merging for that wouldn't be an issue when the time is.
No, not particularly.
There's still outstanding safety concerns that I think the Geth team is trying to convey, but that is something that I think we can work on between the Geth team and sorry, I'm not familiar with who was the one who was pushing the PRs that Marius was merging. Was that from Alex's team?
I'm not. I mean, what do you mean for PRs which Marius was merging?
Oh, the assembly. Martin said earlier this.
Well, I'm. Oh, okay. Well, the author of the PR in Gas is Honor, who is never on this call. More or less, I can talk to him directly in Telegram. We actually had this discussion that it's actually maybe wiser to remove the assembly. At least one of the engines, which was less tested by him. Actually, it's also possible from all other perspectives to remove the assembly altogether. It wouldn't be a problem, performance-wise.
Okay. Just Geth, do you have final thoughts? I wanted to time box this for the rest of the updates.
Nope.
Okay.
It's a good time to renote that YOLO, that this was something that would be resolved before going into Ropsten, or something that we care about breaking. So just to get some context as to things to be as like concerns versus when they need to be resolved by, what they're being resolved for.
Yeah, and like traditionally within the core dev security and making sure that the network has stable has been paramount. So we'll all keep that in mind as we go forward.
Definitely
trying to work together on this stuff. So yeah, James, if you want to continue.
Open Ethereum.
For which EIP?
For 2537, just
okay.
updates on the implementation.
So we are currently focusing on the pull request by Alex. It's under review, and I expect it to be merged soon if no sudden problems arise.
Great. Besu?
Merged.
Okay, I'll have someone we'll update that when I can touch this. Oh, I can also do that here. Nethermind, I believe he's not here at the moment.
Yeah, they're going to be coming in late.
Well, Thomas is here. I see him.
Oh, Thomas got here. Oh, great.
Yeah, I'm on the call. As for the BLS, we'll be probably working on it this weekend. So I'm thinking of two things. First of all, I'll check if it's possible to just do that with the Harumi codes that we have now, or is it actually introducing some additional operations that are only possible with the PRs from Alex, and then we'll just write a wrapper for C# and we'll try to provide that to the Geth team to do some fuzzing together. But I can do any promises for this weekend, but that's the plan. That this weekend will be tested and merged.
Okay, and Ethereum JS or Trinity. I don't think I see anyone from JS.
Yeah, I think most of these are sort of work in progress, no major update.
Cool. We can move on then from that, Hudson.
Oh, okay, perfect. Next up, we have EFI review for the EIP 2046 and EIP 2565. I copy-pasted these from the last agenda, but I think you addressed earlier, James, that at least for 2565, that's something where it wasn't because of something with Open Ethereum. We're not going to go forward with that in this fork. Is that what you mentioned?
For as part of going in YOLO 1, but that
YOLO
isn't
1,
about
that's
yeah,
right.
that isn't about Berlin, and there still needs to be discussion about the gas costs and things around that. Or there's ongoing discussion, so it'd be good to have a conversation about it.
Okay, and Kelly can give an update on that in a second, I bet, because I think that is the EIP that Kelly's involved in, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay. First, though, 2046, the reduce gas cost for statics calls made to pre-compiles. I think this has to do with 2666, the one, item number 3. Can someone update on that EIP and any thoughts around it?
I can update on 2666.
Perfect.
For, more or less initially, I also kind of included the proposal of 2046 into the 2666. And with my kind of more radical approach, which Martin was mentioning once, that you can just make a precompile call, like pure call cost equal to 0, and absorb this additional overhead into the pricing of the precompile itself. So this was actually a result which I kind of this approach was included into the results, which I also published for repricing of specific precompiles and also the catch-up function in EVM itself. More or less, this work just represents what is first of all, what is the performance right now at the current state of clients of gas and Open Ethereum. And second, the pricing formulas are more complicated in the sense that they no longer always operate on something like price per hashing of 32 bytes of the input. Now pricing depends on internal structure, for example, of the hash functions, which accept inputs by blocks, which are not always equal to 32 bytes. So kind of different ranges of input lengths will result into the same price for kind of actual computation spent on evaluating the hash function. Like for example, for catch-up function, the input lengths must be chunked into 136 bytes, and like so hashing like 0 and 100 bytes is actually the same for purpose of actual time spent on computation. All this is reflected in formulas. Also, because the call cost was reduced to 0, it also would require to increase the price of bn add and multiply precompiles. Bn multiply is kind of negligible change, and bn add should be bumped like I think twice and something. But it still would result in the net costs, which are much smaller for end users. More or less, this is just a proposal to get the pricing into line with actual performance and efficiency.
Quick question before I open it up to everyone else. Would you say that 2666 supersedes 2046, or is it complementary?
Axie kind of asked to remove the direct proposal to reduce the precompile call cost to 0 from 2666. That's why I list 2046, ModExp, and another one which I don't remember by number, which assigns first, I think, 1024 numbers of address space to precompiles. But more or less, those are logically kind of come all together. If one reduces the call to precompile to 0 or maybe not some non-zero number, then it's necessary to check that all pricing is not affected by this, and there are no internal compensations in pricing for this fact. That's why ModExp repricing is also kind of required. And for all other precompiles, I just did the measurements to either do some adjustments or just change the pricing formula, but just to preserve the fact that there is no kind of attack, that the cost of execution was kind of high, but the cost of the nominal price of the precompile call was low because it internally taken into account the 700 gas, which I paid right now.
Okay. Does anyone have comments, questions? Okay. Thanks for the update on 2666. 2046 you said was Alex's, right? Or Axix?
Yeah.
Okay. Axix, do you have any update on that? It looked like there was a comment in 2666 about having some like offhand discussions about stuff with 2046.
Yeah, it was a. So I don't remember now, but it's in the discussion, the link to the previous Allcodev call, probably a month or two ago, when we discussed this last. And I think during that call, so this is what I commented on 2666. And during that call, we agreed that the actual number proposed in 2446 is not the final number. It was to be determined through, I guess, benchmarking. And in that all-core dev call, if I felt that we were on the opinion that it would make sense to extend 2046 with like a final proposed number and introduce the restrictions for the BN precompiles. And we also suggested to maybe do the other repricings separately. And I think it would be better just to have like a more focused call regarding this and not the all core devs, just to finalize these details. And because just this all core dev call doesn't seem to be the best venue to discuss this precompile repricing topic.
Agreed. In that case, would you want to take lead on making that call and just sending out a message in the core dev getter that just says whoever wants to join a call can talk at this time or something? Or James, do you want to handle that?
I can do that.
Okay.
Just people who are interested can message me, and I've made a Ethereum PM calendar, so this would be something I would add to it, and I can add whoever would like to be invited to the call to be on the list for that, and then I'll actually let's figure out when would be a good time after this call.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Now on to 2565, repricing the EIP 198 ModExp precompile. That'd be Kelly.
Yeah, so just to give a quick update, 2 weeks ago when we came in, we had two paths forward for the repricing. One was simple parameter change and updating the Open Ethereum library, and the other one was a slightly more complicated pricing formula and not changing the Open Ethereum library. What we've decided to go with is the pricing formula change. So we did work with Artem on the Open Ethereum team to see if we could put in a different library. Unfortunately, there were some compilation problems on Windows with that library, so we won't be going that route. So at this point, Artem has implemented a draft PR for the pricing formula change. I am in the process of revising the EIP to reflect what the specifics of exactly what the new pricing formula change should be. And then the next step, once that's done, I can share that with the Geth team, and hopefully we can get a draft PR there. So I think we've got the path forward that will work for both Open Ethereum and Geth, and we have a PR for Open Ethereum, and we will shortly have an updated EIP and hopefully a PR for Geth.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any other comments on any of the EFIs we've talked about or EIP 2666? So this can be the reduced gas cost for static calls, the ModExp precompile, or the EIP 2666. Any comments or questions? Okay. Next up, we have EIP 1559 update. I know there was a recent call on that apparently a lot was discussed and maybe got done. I don't have all the details, but I think who was going to talk about that?
Me.
Oh,
Yeah.
wonderful. Go ahead.
Yeah, a couple updates from the implementer calls. It was yesterday. So first is about the PR about removing the block size and transaction size riders from this EIP. So the plan was to create a separate EIP for the riders, and then we would have to decide if we want to make that a dependency for the EIP 1559 or not. So this is the first update. So I don't know if we can merge the PR about removing the riders or not. Basically, I don't know if you want to start testnet with or without the riders. So this is something we have to decide. Second update, yeah, we talked about non-proof of work networks, and we were wondering if 1559 is valuable in those contexts, and if yes, what will be the impact on the implementation? Because this EIP is designed with a transition phase in it. So what if you want to start directly with EIP 1559 rules on the consortium network, for example? Also, yeah, we discussed about simulation versus testnet. So we have some discussion with Ian from Vulcanized and Barnaby about simulation. So what would be the best path to test this EIP? Do we want to deploy some testnet and play with real users, or do we want to implement some agent simulators? And last, about the status about the escalator tip approach, which is an alternative of this EIP. Or also we talk about the possibility of combining them. So yeah, this is also a topic we have to discuss. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks for the update. Anyone have any comments? And that implementers call was uploaded the other day to the Ethereum Foundation YouTube channel, so the same channel that's hosting this video. Implementers call number 2 is on there for EIP 1559. The next item is if everyone can refresh. Oh, go ahead.
I want to say there's really good mock-ups and things that were done by Dan, so people who are curious should go and check out that video to be able to see that part and give feedback.
Awesome. Dan Finlay from MetaMask, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Next up, if you refresh the agenda, I put this one in kind of late, but it's an EIP to limit the size of init code. I believe that's Martin, if you could go ahead.
So, yes. Limit the size of, yeah, that one is pretty trivial suggestion from me and Axel and Pavel, and I think that a couple of people have been touching the same idea. We should place a limit on the size of init code. We chose that limit to be twice the size of the deployable code size. Reasoning being twofold. One, that init code can be used to attack jump test analysis, and it has been done historically in 2017. And even if, yeah, so there's also one more possible future motivation for this if we implement subroutines which are restricted, because if we do so, then the jump test analysis become a bit more complicated, and thus it becomes even trickier for clients to do to protect themselves against attacks of this kind. So regardless if we go that route or not, this would be a good thing to have. Is my take on it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Anybody?
that's about it.
Great. Anybody have comments?
This is the thing that came up on the subroutine call, right, Martin?
Yes. So discussions about subroutine kind of reminded me of this old thing. I've had it lying around for a couple of years actually. I just never submitted it before. But I think it's relevant regardless if we, regardless of whether what kind of subroutine we implement. This makes clients less easily attackable.
Okay. Thanks, Martin. Anybody else? Okay, the next item is Berlin timing. I don't know if there's an update on this or not, James.
No, we're focusing on Yolo and getting VLS implementations into a state that makes it comfortable for us to decide that.
Okay. Item number 7 is the EIP-IP working group / EIP-IP survey. Edson, if you want to give an update on that.
Yeah, so I'm Edson from the Ethereum Caterers. The EIP-IP group has been working on a survey, getting stakeholder feedback, just reason on why and how. So the EIP-IP group is for the EIP improvement process. Improvement implies change in a positive way. This can be done through either moving towards something or moving away from something. So moving towards is goal setting, moving away is problem solving. So a way to do this is we decided to go with problem solving. A way to start solving problems is to first identify them. And to get that from a community is can be done through a survey. So we asked mostly emotional questions. What's your biggest frustration and what's your biggest fear with the current EIP process? Frustrations are a good signal to see current problems, and fears are a good signal to see problems that people foresee. So the results of that survey, we also have a few other questions, such as what do you currently like about the EIP process? That would represent things that we shouldn't change. It also was a good indicator for current values the community had over the EIP process and Ethereum in general. The findings from that are that people liked that the process is structured, has legitimacy, and focuses on the technical aspects, that the barrier of entry is low, and then the bar for approval is pretty high, and that it's transparent and allows fair and thorough review. As far as the results found for the fears and frustrations, they fit in 3 categories, which we can make into a roadmap for the next few steps. Those categories are formalizing decision-making, increasing clarity in the process and within the specifications, and increasing the capacity to push EIPs to completion. So we'll most likely, our roadmap will most likely be in that order: decision-making, clarity, and then increasing capacity. So currently, our current discussions have been around decision-making, namely, how can we separate the EIP process and the hard fork coordination process to make both those processes more clear? Also, how can we make decision making more independent of live calls? So how can we make decision making asynchronous from the live calls that we have every 2 weeks? But that's currently. Hudson, do you have anything else to add?
No, that was a great overview. Thanks for stepping up on that survey and the overview, Edson. Anybody have anything to add, comments or anything?
It's been really good to be able to reference that when we've been thinking about things in the EIP call. So thank you for taking initiative on making that happen.
Okay. If there's nothing else on that, we have testing updates as the next item. Anybody have testing updates that are worth mentioning? Okay. The last item, review previous decisions made and any action items taken. So we have the notes here. Thanks to Brent and Jim for doing the notes. Decisions made, 87.1 from last time is that both EIP 2315 and 2537, so subroutines and the BLS curve, have been accepted into Berlin. The ephemeral Berlin testnet named Yolo to test these Berlin EIPs is going to be created. 87 2.1, 2315, 2537, and 2565 might be included in YOLO, I think is what the note is describing there. Looking at it a little bit closer, I don't know if 2565 is going to be going in necessarily anymore. That's still pending some stuff, so that decision item needs to be clarified a bit further. That's 87.2.1. So 87.3, 2046 is pending results from an open Ethereum benchmark. That's been somewhat updated today. 87.
I'd say that's resolved.
That's resolved? Okay. 87.4, simple subroutines from the EVM for the EVM 2315 has some outstanding specification issues. Get resolved by Tuesday with a call. That also got resolved, and there's next steps on that. 87.5, the last decision made from the last notes. The BLS curve operations, EIP 2537, is going to have a precompile listed by Alex Vlasov by early next week to make it final. Alex, did you include the precompile list into the BLS curve operation EIP?
Sorry, I didn't understand the question actually.
Yeah, no problem.
He did.
Oh yeah,
it has an address.
Oh, you mean the numbers?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, addresses. Okay. Yeah, I mean it was included after the last call, almost the same day or Monday.
Yep.
Okay. Cool. Actions required. There's 7 of these. 87.1, a decision required on looking at the smart contract code for simple subroutines. That was addressed by the meeting. 86.2, that's from 2 meetings ago, completed last week. James to reach out to Alexi for Merkleization and simple subroutines. 86.3, ongoing ProgPow compromise proposal to be decided on. Testnet then Pocket is what the compromise proposal is referring to. 87.4, update EIP bot with withdrawn. That is still ongoing, from my understanding. I don't think there's movement on that on the EIP bot.
That is changed more into working on the EIP standardization process, which I could actually talk about a little bit maybe after this.
Okay.
After you finish this list.
Sure. 87.5, move EIP 2583 to withdrawn. That's has that been merged, James?
That can't be until the statuses are resolved.
Oh, that's right. 2 more left. 87.6, James Hancock to review EFI EIP and accept existing pull request.
That happened.
87.7, AXIC to review Berlin EIP and accept existing pull request. AXIC, have you looked at the Berlin EIP in a bit?
Yeah, all of those changes were merged.
Okay, great. Then that's resolved. Okay, so that's all the decisions from last time. I'm going to go over the decisions to be referenced on the notes this time. Or not decisions, but I guess action items and I'll mention if it's a decision as well. So, continuing to update the ephemeral testnet Yolo Meta EIP and Berlin EIP is a continuing action item that James is going to handle. James Hancock will follow up with Open Ethereum, Axic, and Martin to discuss EIP 2315 simple subroutines after this call to merge changes. I don't think that's the one that requires a call. That's the next thing I'm going to talk about. And then James to coordinate with Axic and interested parties on a pre-compiled gas cost changes call sometime in the near future. And then finally, the last item, Kelly to continue working with Open Ethereum team for the EIP 2565 repricing of ModExp precompile. Is there anything that sounded off to anybody, or any decisions or action items that I'm missing from this call? And if you, yeah, go ahead.
We should add merging the ephemeral EIP.
Ah, right. So merging the ephemeral EIP into the EIP's repository. That's a good one.
The testnet specification.
Okay.
So just to be clear, so 2315 has the changes in gas costs has been merged into the spec by Martin like 5 minutes ago, and this is the spec that will be live on the Yolo testnet.
I think it's still waiting for an Axic thing.
We would change the opcodes as well.
Yep.
While we're at it.
Yeah, Axic just needs to do one more PR, and then that's the one that's going to go in Artem.
Well, no, Axic needs to do one PR. Then I need to regenerate the examples in the EIP. But
yeah, you're right. Sorry, I missed that part.
And Kareem will need to regenerate the consensus test cases. But if you want to make changes in Open Ethereum, I guess you can just take the opcodes that Axic already posted somewhere. I don't recall exactly where they were posted.
Axic, do you know where those were posted? Was it an Ethereum Magicians thread?
The opcode changes?
Yes.
Yeah, it was in the discussion URL of the EIP.
Okay.
It's within the bottom 10 comments.
Okay, and a to-do is also that you're going to do a PR to change that within the EIP itself. So we can finally, then we can say that that's going into Yolo after tests are regenerated and a few other steps occur.
And I can reach out to all the clients when that's the specification step is fully ready.
Great. Artem, does that clear everything up?
Well, kind of. I mean, I would still like to see at least some PR to the EIP that would declare that after that PR, the EIP would be final. Or rather not final, but would be the version that will be deployed on the Yolo testnet. But yeah, let's I'll take a look at the proposed changes that are remaining.
Yeah, I don't know if there's like a status indicator within the EIP that anyone's ever used to indicate it's going into an ephemeral testnet, because we've never done an ephemeral testnet. But what we'll do with that is James will organize outside of the EIP when that's done and let everybody know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess what you could do is on that ephemeral testnet specification, you could put on implement 2315 at commit hash blah.
That's a good idea. We have another thing. So part of the EIP meetings that we've been talking about is, let me just share my screen again so this is a little bit easier to see. So part of going into, I didn't actually hit the share button. Part of allowing more asynchronous things to happen, like this is a beginning of that, because we can have a client signal and then this be updated that the specification and stuff is accepted. So we've been talking about updating statuses for the EIP standardization process and having final being that a specification is in a final state, and and then having that be separate as to if that is to be included or not. So this might actually be a good test case for that, where we could make the EIP, this version of it, final, just so it can, then people can know what needs to be implemented for YOLO, and then additional changes after that could be made. But it would be to an updated EIP that updates this one, if that makes sense.
Just to clarify, final would mean that the spec is frozen?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think for this particular EIP example, I don't know if we want to freeze the spec if we know we're going to change it so soon after, potentially. Because then we'd be finalizing things all the time.
If it's, yeah.
But we can discuss that on the next EIP meeting.
Yeah, I was going to say that is a longer discussion we should have elsewhere.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, and thanks for that update. Yeah, these charts are nice. We had really good conversations about them last EIP meeting, and have some notes and a video for those interested who want to go to the Ethereum Cat Herders GitHub, to the EIP repo. We have and also on our YouTube channel we have the video. Do you have
I can add the hash. Let's add that to the to-dos for so that people are all the clients are clear what version is being implemented.
So for action items, continuing updating the ephemeral testnet YOLO meta EIP with including PR hashes, or I guess commit hashes.
Yeah.
Do you have enough tabs open?
Oh, this is only one of 3 windows.
All right. Is there anyone else who has any other things before we go? We can cut this early. Going once, going twice. All right, the next meeting is going to be June 12th at 1400 UTC. Thanks everyone for coming, and thanks to the note takers and everyone else who participated. Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.